Hello and guten Tag, guten Morgen, guten Nacht, wherever you're watching the video from. In this video, we want to majorly tackle the part of the B2 expression format. A lot of times, it gives a number of students a problem, or you, for example, then you might know what needs of you to be done, but then you might not know how to handle this part in the easiest part possible. So in this video, we are likely to work on that. Welcome. In the B2 Goethe Institute Sprechen Teil 1, we are usually being provided with 3 points. However, the last point is something that we usually don't consider much. How do you conclude a vortrag? How do you conclude a presentation? So this also comes hand in hand, or in hand is just like the B1 expression. So first and foremost, I believe you come across the words like beschreiben Sie mehrere Möglichkeiten, could also be formen or just Alternativen. Both are one and the same thing. Then the second point is usually nennen Sie Vor- und Nachteile und bewerten Sie diese. Don't worry, we're going to discuss each bit by bit so that you understand how to work with the ready metal as fast as possible. And by the way, the ready methods that you're going to tackle can be used for any given topic, be it also the big ones, which you can sometimes by chance find in the B2 expression, for example, fit bleiben und so weiter. And lastly, you'll have the sort of beschreiben Sie eine Alternative genauer. Also, don't worry, you're just looking at the points that we have, but then we're going to dive more into details and discuss each point step by step. Then lastly, the conclusion part. Zusammenfassend, in summary, what can you say about the topic? Let's dive right in. So, you might also be wondering, how do you by the way, start? So, in my case, I suggest that you go with Guten Tag or Hallo zusammen. This is all because you might not be able to familiarize yourself with the people in that room. They could be all Damen or all Herren, or a mixture of a Dame und Herren and so weiter, because, by the way, your Gesprächspartner or partnerin also plays a key role in this case. So to make it easier, you can just start with Guten Tag or Hallo zusammen. It's more of a general thing. Does not identify with the gender, but anybody in the room will likely to reply to what you're saying. Also, sometimes you can also leave it out if your partner started the conversation, but to be safe, just give the people have the ground. When you greet someone, you usually take the ground as to compare to when you will not greet anyone in particular or in general. Apart from that, there is also another challenging part. Some people tend to work with the B1 introductory part, which is also okay. But in this case, I'll suggest that you use one of the two. For example, number one, you can start with, after saying Guten Tag or Hallo zusammen, you can go straight to the introductory part where you introduce your topic by saying, Das Thema meines Vortrags lautet. Then you name your topic. In this case, we'll be working with heute Nasi. Although it's something that is so controversial, diskutiert, but this is what we're going to use as our example. There are more videos on how you can go about this, which you'll find in the channel. Or again, you can also decide to start with the number 2. By the way, this is just a rudimentary of phrases that you can use, but any that you think is comfortable with you also work. It doesn't matter. Just know that with the B2, there's something that they expect of you as compared to that of the B1. So again, you can start with Ich habe mir das Thema heute Nazi ausgesucht und möchte Ihnen mehr darüber erzählen. Also, heute Nazi can be changed with any topic that you will be provided with. For example, if you are to be provided with a topic like Jugendliche in der Regierung, then you can say, das Thema meines Vortrags lautet Jugendliche in der Regierung. Or perhaps if it was fit bleiben, you can also say, ich habe mir das Thema fit bleiben ausgesucht und möchte Ihnen mehr darüber erzählen. Then you will have nailed the introductory part. Also, so point number one, we've already introduced the topic, but how do you beschreiben Sie mehrere Möglichkeiten oder Formen oder Alternativen? So, not to make it so dry off, and then something that will not give you rather point, you can say, dieses Thema interessiert mich sehr, denn. So in this particular case, you talk about the topic based on the entire globe, the entire world. What does the entire world think about the topic? Or what does your country say about the topic? Then from there, when you need now to introduce the mehrere Möglichkeiten, Formen or Alternativen, you can also say, obwohl in meinem Heimatland das Thema, then you can bring the topic, nicht gestattet oder gestattet ist, aber ich in einer Studie auch gelesen das. So in this particular case, this is where you can name other alternative of going about the topic. For example, if it was fit bleiben, I would say that, obwohl in meinem Heimatland fit bleiben gestattet ist, aber ich auch in einer Studie gelesen das, fit zu bleiben, man konnte in ein Fitnessstudio gehen oder ein Diät machen. Also, so, although blah 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 is not allowed or is allowed in my country, I've also read in a study that, then you will have also nailed the part of beschreiben Sie mehrere Möglichkeiten, Formen or Alternativen. But let's look at an example. So I'd already introduced the topic, then now I'm coming into the body. So in this case, I'll say, dieses Thema interessiert mich sehr, denn es gibt viele unterschiedliche Meinungen zur Euthanasie in verschiedenen Ländern. This topic interests me a lot because there are different opinions on euthanasia in various countries. Then to continue, where now I bring about the mehrere Möglichkeiten. Remember, that is just part of the introductory. I can say, obwohl in meinem Heimatland Euthanasie nicht gestattet ist, aber ich in einer Studie gelesen, dass in einigen Ländern wie den Niederlanden und Belgien Sterbehilfe unter bestimmten Bedingungen legalisiert würde. Diese zeigt, wie unterschiedlich die Weltgemeinschaft mit diesem komplexen Thema umgeht. Also, although euthanasia is not allowed in my country, that is Kenya, I read in a study that in some countries such as the Netherlands and Belgium, euthanasia has been legalized under certain conditions. This shows how different the international community deals with this complex issue. Then you'll have nailed it. I'm telling you, you'll nail it. Even the people within that room would be more surprised how you can handle this topic. Also, moving on to point number 2, where you should say, nennen Sie Vor- und Nachteile und bewerten Sie diese. In this case, you can talk about an advantage and a disadvantage of one or both of the alternatives that you give for euthanasia, or depending with the topic that you might have at hand. For example, in this case, you can say, natürlich haben einige Methode ihre Vor- und Nachteile. That is just how you can introduce it to make it easier. Then from there you can say einer Seite, andere Seite, on one hand, on the other hand, nicht nur, sondern auch, es gibt viele Vor- und Nachteile. There are many advantages and disadvantages. Ein Nachteil oder ein Vorteil ist das, and a disadvantage or an advantage is that. Then you can also give an example here where you say, zum Beispiel habe ich in einer Studie gelesen, dass, for example, I read in a study that. Then you'll also have nailed the part of nennen Sie Vor- und Nachteile und bewerten Sie diese. But perhaps we can look at an example how to go about the same topic that you're working on. That is euthanasia as part of the explanation. But don't worry, within this channel, there are other videos which you can check to help you understand how to use this format, especially where these three questions are there. So let us look at an example. So here's an example. You can say, einerseits, es gibt Menschen, die glauben, dass Euthanasie eine Möglichkeit ist, Leiden zu beenden, besonders bei unheilbaren Krankheiten. Entschuldigung. So on one hand, some people believe that euthanasia is a way to end suffering, especially in incurable diseases. Then you can continue with another side, argumentieren viele, dass es moralisch falsch ist, das Leben zu beenden, egal unter welchen Umständen. On the other hand, many argue that it is morally wrong to end life under any circumstances. So, at this point, you can bring about any kind of ready method so long as you can touch on a disadvantage and an advantage, which you can be talking about an alternative that you gave or just something that you think about the topic also. But be sure to give an advantage and a disadvantage. And if, by the way, you are wondering how long can I speak for 4 minutes or even more, it's easier if you have a formula. For example, the one that you're working on right now. So let us take a look at the last part. So we've beschrieben mehrere Möglichkeiten. We've talked about the disadvantage and advantage of the topic, but now the last part is also very crucial. Now, not that in this last part you are required to at least bring something, a subject that touches on your personal experience based on one of the alternatives that you gave or something that you want to introduce as part of your experience. So in this case, we say, beschreiben Sie eine alternative Formen oder Möglichkeit genau. It can be any of those three. So in this case, you still need to introduce it so that you don't just come in a flat rate where nobody knows where you're going to or what you're really talking about. So in this case, you can say, ein bisschen ausführlicher möchte ich auf eine Methode eingehen, die ich persönlich sehr nützlich finde. Es handelt sich then from there you can bring what you use as alternative against the topic given or within the topic given. In this case, we're talking about medizinische Methode. So I'll say, ein bisschen ausführlicher möchte ich auf eine Methode eingehen, die ich persönlich sehr nützlich finde. Es handelt sich medizinische Methode. Then from there, you can now touch on it based on your personal experience. Also, I'd like to go into a little more details about a method that I personally find very useful. It's about medical method. Then you can now explain now that method. But then again, remember we have time, so you should at least make a summary based on it or just bring the advantage and disadvantage of the same method, whichever is easier. So in this format, we just want to summarize. So in this case, I'll say, zwar habe ich gute, schlechte oder keine Erfahrung von medizinischer Methode damit gemacht, aber ich finde, dass man einerseits bla bla bla, andererseits ist es aber wichtig zu sagen, dass, denn bla bla bla. But maybe we can give an example, but don't worry, there are many other videos that you can watch that also talks about the same. Don't worry, we'll post them with time. Yes, we need to make them in an understandable format before we can finally give them to you. Otherwise, it says, although I have had good or bad or no experience about of a medical method with this topic, but I think that on the one hand, but on the other hand, it's important to say that, then you'll have nailed it. Let's look at an example. Also, so beschreiben Sie eine Alternative genau. Remember, at this point, we are talking about your personal experience, your personal opinion based on the topic. But in this sense, you're not looking at the advantages that you give, the Mehrere-Möglichkeiten, or anything that does not touch on your personal experience. Remember, you have a choice at this time to also bring something new. So in this case, you can say, ein bisschen ausführlicher möchte ich auf eine Methode eingehen, die ich persönlich sehr nützlich finde. Es handelt sich medizinische Methode. Also, I would like to go into a little more details about a method that I personally find very useful. It's about medical method. Then from there, you can also describe it a little bit more in detail. Remember, we're working with time, so don't let time cut you short. Otherwise, you might be stopped during expression. So in this case, you can say, zwar habe ich keine Erfahrung mit der medizinischen Methode der Euthanasie gemacht, aber ich finde, dass einerseits das Recht auf Selbstbestimmung wichtig ist. Andererseits ist es jedoch wichtig zu sagen, dass ethische Bedenken und Missbrauchsgefahren berücksichtigt werden müssen. Also, although I have no experience with the medical method of euthanasia, I think that on the one hand, the right to self-determination is important. On the other hand, however, it is important to say that ethical concerns and risk of abuse must be taken into account. We will not give you marks by using this kind of phrases or methods. However much you might not know what you're discussing, when you use these things appropriately within the sentence structure or within the right sentence structure order, believe me, you'll score your marks. So I think we can now work on the last part. We've tackled beschreiben Sie mehrere Möglichkeiten. We've talked about advantages. We've also talked about our personal experience. But let's now conclude the topic. So you said everything that you wanted to say, but you want now to conclude your topic so that someone can ask you a question, or you can now clear the table and say, wow, I nailed it. So in this case, you can go with zusammenfassen möchte ich betonen, dass, or zusammenfassen lässt sich sagen, dass, or you can also say im Allgemeinen, or es hängt von, ab, or ob. So both of them you can use interchangeably depending with the topic you have, and also depending with the one that you think will fit whatever you want to conclude. But not that. When we are talking about conclusion, this is also where we take it wrong. It's not about what you think about the alternatives that you gave. It's not touching on the advantages and the way the disadvantage weigh the advantage and vice versa also. It's not about your personal experience also, it's just about a general question. What do you think about the topic? For example, you have a topic about textbook. So in general, they will ask you, what do you think about textbook? They're not asking you to talk about the advantage, the disadvantage, other alternatives of having textbook, like maybe ebooks and so. But whatever they're asking you is this one. What do you think about textbook? Then in this case, say to the point. Don't beat about the bush. Just go straight to the point and say textbooks are good or textbooks are bad. Don't not looking into the advantage or the disadvantage. But let's look at an example. So our topic was heute Nazi. So in this case, I'll say zusammenfassen lässt sich sagen, dass heute Nazi ein schwieriges und sensibles Thema ist, das stark von kultureller und ethischen Überzeugungen abhängt. In conclusion, euthanasia is a difficult and sensitive topic that heavily depends on cultural and ethical beliefs. And then you can now conclude. That is just a summary of the topic, but now the main part is whereby you thank the audience. So in this case, you can use a phrase like, obwohl ich gerne auf noch offene Frage antworte, ist mein Referat damit zu Ende. Haben Sie vielen Dank für Ihre Aufmerksamkeit. Also, although I'm open to question, unfortunately my presentation has come to an end. Thank you for your time and attention. Believe me, you have your marks. So, we've nailed everything, but now let's do it in the expression format. Remember to talk about when we were talking about the introductory part. So let's begin. Guten Tag. Ich habe mir das Thema heute Nazi ausgesucht und möchte Ihnen mehr darüber erzählen. Also, dieses Thema interessiert mich sehr, denn es gibt viele unterschiedliche Meinungen zur Euthanasie in verschiedenen Ländern. Obwohl in meinem Heimatland Euthanasie nicht gestattet ist, habe ich in einer Studie gelesen, dass in einigen Ländern wie den Niederlanden und Belgien Sterbehilfe unter bestimmten Bedingungen legalisiert würde. Dies zeigt, wie unterschiedlich die Weltgemeinschaft mit diesem komplexen Thema umgeht. Einerseits gibt es Menschen, die glauben, dass Euthanasie eine Möglichkeit ist, Leiden zu beenden, besonders bei unheilbaren Krankheiten. Andererseits argumentieren viele, dass es moralisch falsch ist, das Leben zu beenden, egal unter welchen Umständen. Also, ein bisschen ausführlicher möchte ich auf eine Methode eingehen, die ich persönlich sehr nützlich finde. Es handelt sich um medizinische Methode. Zwar habe ich keine Erfahrung mit der medizinischen Methode der Euthanasie gemacht, aber ich finde, dass einerseits das Recht auf Selbstbestimmung wichtig ist. Andererseits ist es jedoch wichtig zu sagen, dass ethische Bedenken und Missbrauchsgefahren berücksichtigt werden müssen. Zusammenfassend lässt sich sagen, dass Euthanasie ein schwieriges und sensibles Thema ist, das stark von kulturellen und ethischen Überzeugungen abhängt. Obwohl ich gerne auf noch offene Fragen antworte, ist mein Referat damit zu Ende. Haben Sie vielen Dank für Ihre Aufmerksamkeit. Also be sure to be slow. We better get what you're saying than when you speak faster, then we get nothing. Ich hoffe, dass diese Ausarbeitung hilfreich für Ihre Prüfungsvorbereitung ist. Auf Wiederhören.